Cheeseheads. Get on your feet. It's Curd and Long. Hosted by Sparky, Fifer, and Ryan Horvath.
Welcome in another edition of Curd and Long. Steve Sparky Fifer with you, along with our special guest co-host today, Ken Ingalls. Ryan Horvath with the day off. And of course, you know Ken Ingalls from being on Twitter at Ken Ingalls. He is like the resident Packer salary cap expert that doesn't work for the Packers or the NFL. He just does it on the side and makes no money off of it, but still does it to help all the rest of us Packer fans. Really, you might be the most generous guy on Twitter, really, Ken, at the end of the day.
Well, thanks for that, Sparky. Yeah, it's just, a nerdy hobby that I just had a lot of fun with. And like you said, I don't really do it for the clicks or the engagement or the money aspect of it. I do it because I find it interesting, and apparently other people find it interesting as well and have a bunch of questions for it. So I'm just kind of here to help everyone out.
And you're a numbers guy in real life. So this is like right up your alley.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like my day job, I work with numbers, accounting, finance, and then, diehard Packer fan. It's just kind of where everything meets in the middle, and just kind of worked out. It's one of those things where when my wife was pregnant, we spent a lot of time just hanging out on the couch. She wasn't able to do a lot, and I was learning more and more about the salary cap and like getting more involved in it and trying to figure it out and building it out. And it's been a lot of time just in front of the computer, and then it just built into what it is now. And now this little obsession I have.
At what point did you realize how kind of big it became on social media with people like kind of retweeting and following all of that? Was there a point along the way where you're like, holy crap, this is getting bigger than I ever thought it was? This was just a fun little thing, and now people are kind of looking at me constantly for information.
Yeah, there was a few years ago, like 2021 or something, I put out like a, kind of like a roadmap of what the year would look like. And I think in like one day I had like over like 2,000 followers join. I was like, what is this? Like, how did this even happen off of like, people retweeting and following? I'm like, okay, I think people actually are enjoying this, so let's do it. And I've always just been someone too, where like, I feel like I can take really complex ideas and like boil them down into ways that like everyone can understand them. Like, people aren't like me who like to look at the numbers or whatever, but like I try and explain it in a way that like can, the everyday Joe can kind of follow along and figure it out and be okay. I learned a little bit about it.
See, for me, doing radio, I do radio because I'm not smart enough to do accounting or financing or anything else. So when I have the opportunity to pick your brain and have you break it down ABC style so that I understand it, if I get it, I feel like a majority of people listening will get it. And sometimes I'll ask questions I know answers to, like I do all interviews, but just to allow the listener to kind of maybe understand it a little bit better. All right, so we're going to talk about Kenny Clark. We're going to talk about Jordan Love. We're going to talk about the future of this team and the salary cap. We just got done kind of going through salary cap hell, I guess, here the last 2 or 3 years. From my standpoint, I think they did pretty darn good considering how screwed up everything was and coming out on the other end of it, it appears.
Right. 2023, going into that was always for me going to be the year of like, okay, this is it. They're up against it. It's the year that they finally, moved on from Rodgers. Everyone was talking about, was it a year too late, a year too early, whatever. But no matter what, on that last contract that Rodgers had, no matter what, when he left, it was going to be painful. And there was a lot of other contracts too that kind of all lined up at the time. So the fact that last year, 2023, the Packers were the youngest team in the league, that wasn't by design. That wasn't by like Russ Ball and Goody sitting down and be like, you know what, we should really, really, really get younger. It's just like, you know what, we have to do it, right? And it worked out the best way possible, right? Like they, rostered, was it 12 draft picks last year, 11, 12, 13, something like that. And the year before, a ton too. Like they got really young, but the guys can play. So it was really the best case scenario of like, okay, we're kind of in cap hell. Things are all coming to a head. We don't have a lot of money to spend on outside free agents. We're going to be kind of nickel and diming. Like I forget if I go back and look at it, like I compared what they spent on outside guys versus the past couple of years where they were tight, but not super tight. It was embarrassing how much they just weren't spending on guys, but it's like these back-to-back drafts have just been outstanding. And, things are nice. You have a core of really young players who can come up together, get out of that painful area. And now the future is looking bright right now. It's a good thing. And I've done some initial analysis like this year, which is crazy. 2024, last year they were the youngest team ever. 2024, they can be even younger than last year, which is insane.
Yeah, it absolutely is. The other thing too about this, and we'll get into the details of the contracts and all of that, but just talking in generalities, everybody was freaking out about the Jordan Love deal and having to pay Jordan Love, and this is why Jordan Love should have been playing earlier, and now you got to pay him right away after only 1 year. I kept telling everybody, but guys, this is unlike any other scenario we're talking about. This is not Caleb Williams going to Chicago and DJ Moore getting some gigantic contract and Keenan Allen and these other guys. He is surrounded, like you said, by a bunch of inexperienced guys all on rookie deals around him until they just got Josh Jacobs. But last year, it was all relatively cheap guys around him, which means they got 2-3 years here before they really got to pay anybody. And if nobody steps up to be that true dominant number one, none of those guys are going to get paid a ton of money either.
Right. It's really interesting. Like I was thinking about it with the receivers. I'm just fascinated to know what that wide receiver room is going to look like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when all these guys who are in year 2 and 3 of their rookie deals, they've got a room, you got your top 4 with Watson, Reed, Dobbs, Wicks, and you got Bo Melton, and you got DeBose,
Malik Heath, Grant
Heath.
DeBose.
Yeah, like kind of rounding out your top 7. Like who's gonna be around? Like they are all cheap this year and for the most part next year too. And like who are they going to choose to keep? What's it going to look like? And then they're going to have to reload with some of the guys that they don't. But it's a really good problem to have. And you look at last year too, like you said, like everyone around them. I think the most expensive guy that was around them was Aaron Jones, and they asked him to take a pay cut last year too. So it was just they were bottom of the barrel in terms of age and price, but what they were able to do on the field, especially that second half of the season where they were just destroying it on the offensive side, was awesome to watch, and I'm excited what they can do this year with that.
And you think about it, that Josh Jacobs deal that everybody was going kind of crazy about as far as how much they spent on him at running back. But after a year, 2 years, definitely 2 years, they can be out from under that. And Marshawn Lloyd very well might be that next guy, and he'll still be on his rookie deal. Both your tight ends, Musgrave and Kraft, they're going to be on their rookie deal for a while. I mean, you're not paying a left tackle like Bakhtiari, buddy, all pro left tackle, buddy. You're not paying a right tackle any type of big money. Jenkins, obviously, but that's it. There is nobody else that you have to pay on this offense kind of going forward for the next several years, Ken.
Well, what's interesting they're both left and right tackles that you bring up. Both of those guys are going into, this is their third year this year, 2024. Next year will be their fourth year in their rookie deal. And according to the CBA, you cannot extend a player who was drafted until they've played 3 seasons, right, on that deal. So next year they might get a little itchy and start being like, hey, it's time to get mine, especially like on the left side, Rashid, like he's been playing and he's your starting left tackle making 7th round player money. Like he could be like, okay, guys, I'm a top tier left tackle in this league. I've shown it now for, if he does it this year, like 2.5 seasons, like what are we doing? And he could start saying, I need to get paid even though he's under contract. Same thing on the right side, though. Zach Tom, similar. Like he's been there, done that. He's been proven to be one of the top tackles as well on the other side.
They could screw Zach Tom if they decide, hey, we're moving you into center going into your 4th year. Then it's going to get real itchy and dicey because then it's going to be like, we're going to pay you center money instead of tackle money, and he just lost a bunch of change.
Right. The Packers did the same thing though with Jenkins. So if you read what they did with him, he's got clauses and little things in his deal that says, okay, if you play at left tackle and you earn like Pro Bowl or whatever honors, there's elevators and there's bonuses in there.
Smart.
So they know that they've got guys who, they love their versatile inside outside guys, especially all the way inside going to center. It seems like they've got multiple guys now on their offensive line who can line up at any of the 5 spots. And they've got kind of contingency plans, built in case, okay, yeah, we might need to play you at guard, but if you go to center, that's how they did with Elton Shanks. Now he's kind of made his home at guard. Who knows? He might he might be the center this year, how things shake out. But yeah, those guys, the offensive line, that they're young, they're versatile. Eventually, they're going to start getting paid, and those are the two next kind of coming up. Josh Myers, if I know there's that controversy, right? Is he going to be the center? Are they grooming these other guys to take over and maybe ditch him early? He's on the last year of his deal this year. If let's say he has an outstanding year, he might be due for an extension too. So you really have 3 of their 5 guys who are cheap now, who are all going to be looking for that money next year, potentially, if things go well.
It's going to be crazy. He is Ken Ingalls. Follow him on Twitter at Ken Ingalls. I'll take a quick time out, come back. We'll talk contracts. Rashawn Gary, Jordan Love. We'll get the nuts, the bolts, the details that you're probably not seeing or hearing about anywhere else. Ken Ingalls continues on with me, Steve Sparky Fifer. Download Kurt and Long on your Odyssey app, wherever you download your favorite podcast at. You can also check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Back after this, Kurt and Long. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 a.m. The Fan, weekday afternoons, Wisconsin Sports Daily from 2 to 5 afternoon on The Fan. Being joined today by special co-host Ken Ingalls, filling in for Ryan Horvath of BetMGM tonight, who is off the rest of the week. Ken, thanks so much for coming on. Follow him on Twitter at Ken Ingalls. Let's get into contract talk, which is why we got you on, obviously, to talk about Kenny Clark and Jordan Love. Let's start with the easy one first. Kenny Clark getting paid his money, which I don't think anybody necessarily is surprised by. And I feel like Kenny Clark may be one of those rare guys that starts and ends his career in Green Bay, kind of the way this is headed at this point. Your thoughts on the deal Clark got and how it was all put together by the Packers?
Right. Yeah. Clark was one of those odd ones, right? Where he's got that rare third contract in Green Bay. Like, they do not give out third contracts very often unless you play quarterback or what they've considered like a Hall of Famer type player. Kenny Clark probably isn't that Hall of Fame tier, but he also came into the league when he was like 12 years old. It seems like he's been around. He's been around forever, and like most guys are only starting to talk about getting into their second deal. Now he just signed his third deal, so he's still young. He kind of is the exception to the rule there for Green Bay. I was wondering if the timing of it, if they were just going to kind of maybe hold back and maybe see how he did in this new scheme, maybe do like, a month into the season or something. But obviously the Packers were excited to get him. One thing that I look at, so when he signed his last deal, he was the highest paid defensive lineman or interior defensive lineman, not named Aaron Donald, when he signed that deal. So he was the second highest paid. Going into this season, he was the 16th highest paid. So a bunch of people leapfrogged him, like 14 different contracts dumped up above him. When he signed this deal, he's now the 12th highest paid. So he's not being paid similarly to where he was last time around, where he was number 2 in the league at his position. He's kind of down a few pegs. So it's, I feel like the Packers feel like they got a deal on this, a little bit of a discount. Now, he's making $21 million a year. He was supposed to make $17.5 million a year on his old contract. So I don't see this as like a market resetting type of deal. Like you hear about this, right? Like the next wide receiver comes, he wants to be the highest paid. The next left tackle, he wants to be the highest paid. That wasn't the case here with Kenny Clark. It was kind of like, hey, this is the going rate for, a top 10-ish type player. Do you want it? And he's like, yeah, I'll take it. And so they lock him up for another 3 years beyond this on a pretty reasonable deal. It's kind of nice to see the Packers going back to pre-COVID salary cap declining ways of like doing their deal. What we saw in the past is that they would like restructure and push out every dollar they could to future years just to try and jam as many contracts in as possible. And they were really fighting just to make space and get guys. His base salary is $10 million. They could have had that be $1 million and have the cap hit be a little bit cheaper. They're leaving some meat on the bone, which is a good sign for the state of the team and the salary cap, that they can afford to put a little bit money in the now and not have to kind of mortgage it off to the future. But overall, it's a solid deal for Green Bay. If they really wanted to get out, it's really 2024, 2025. He's going to be around. Let's see how it does in 2026, when I think he'll be like 30, 31 years old, something like that. and they can, assess at that point. There's no extra guarantees in it, so it's the signing bonus. And then if we want to keep you around, we'll keep you around.
I just wonder if at any point he thinks to himself, he may not be thinking it now. Well, he might be thinking it now. They're in training camp. But you see what's going on at training camp. You hear how these guys are talking. As far as, I would have played in this defense for the last 3 or 4 years. I would have got myself a heck of a lot more money probably than I got. And now I signed the deal before I started playing in this defense. I could rack up 10 sacks a year. I'm going to be way underpaid at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm stuck. I mean, seriously, at the end of the day, he may look back and go, man, that 3-4 defense absolutely cost me a ton of money.
Right. Yeah. He's kind of that prototypical, what you're looking for in for a 4-3 defense. You typically have a guy who's the nose in a 4-3 is kind of like your bigger guy who's like your run stuffer, who, if you can get some pass rush, that's a nice bonus to have. That's Kenny Clark. He's one of the best pass rushing big dudes, around 300 pounds you can find on the offense or on the defensive line. He, I think, is just going to eat in this defense. And we may look back, and if that this deal be like, how the hell did we get him at 21 million when he, the guys are at the top of the league are making so much more. I did a little comparison after this deal. It made me look, okay, what are the top guys getting? And there's a comparison. So the top interior defensive lineman contract right now is Chris Jones in Kansas City. He's making $31.75 million. Kenny Clark is our top paid. He's making 21. That's 10 million less per season. Then you look at a guy so I went down, okay, look elsewhere in the defensive line and look at the edge, Rashawn Gary. He's making 24 million a year. Nick Bosa is making 34. Again, $10 million less per season. So our top 2 highest paid guys are pocketing 20 million less on average per season that we have them. That's a good position and a good problem to have if you're the Green Bay Packers.
But they spent all that money on Jair Alexander, who is definitely not making 10th or 15th money at the cornerback position. They paid him top dollar.
Yes, and they paid him top dollar, and he's still the top dollar. So they made him the highest paid, in 2022? That deal has not been topped yet. So it's kind of interesting that, 22 offseason went around, then 23, now 24 is done. There really aren't a ton of guys who are sitting there waiting for that big payday. We might get into mid-season or next offseason where anyone even has an opportunity to leapfrog him. So, and he really hasn't been playing at that I'm the number one alpha type guy, and obviously he had his issues last year with the, team suspension, among other things. And it'll be interesting. And then, you hear, rumblings of Romeo Dobbs is just killing them in practice. But again, it's one-on-ones and the pads aren't even fully on, but we'll see how it goes, but that might be something, after, that they'll need to look at, but you win some, you lose some.
Romeo Dobbs is damn good at running routes though, man. I mean,
I know
that dude is tough when it comes to
I remember, his rookie year, I remember he was in training camp and that's all you heard about coming out of camp was this dude and the memes going on about him in the gold jacket right away after catching the, 30-yard bomb from Rodgers, right? Not even Love. And just this guy's going to be that guy. And now, this is his 3rd year and he's just looking like he's putting together, which is interesting too, because everyone was talking about, okay, if you had to line up your ideal 3, who would it be? Okay. You'd want Watson for the deep speed. You'd want Reed in the slot and maybe Wicks is that possession guy on the outside. Where's Romeo Dobbs? But Romeo Dobbs just might be better than all of them. Who knows? It's just crazy. He's just one of those guys where the numbers and the metrics of analytics, the nerd numbers don't really pop off the charts, but he's just a good football player. And
I think I've said it at Wisconsin Sports Daily. I think he's their driver. I think that's what he is in this offense. I think he ends up being Jordan Love's driver, where every time he needs a play, he goes to Dobbs in a big moment, or Aaron's Randall Cobb, or however you want to kind of look at it. He's going to be that guy at the end of the day. Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the Christian Watson speed and length and all of that other stuff, but in big moments when they need big plays, I think Romeo Dobbs is going to end up being that guy. But now again, he leads him in receptions, okay, but he doesn't have a ton of touchdowns, or he's got a bunch of touchdowns, but he doesn't have the receptions. That's going to be the issue when these wide receivers all come up, because I don't think any one guy is going to dominate for the next 2 years all these categories like Devontae Adams did, like Jordy Nelson did. I just don't think that guy exists right now.
Yeah, if you're into fantasy football, there's not a Green Bay Packer wide receiver that I'm like saying you need to take this guy. He's definitely going to be the one. Like, you have no idea. And those are the guys you take later and you say, okay, I hope so. But like, yeah, there's no clear cut number one. But again, that's a lot for fantasy. Like, if you're building an offense and like real life football, you love the situation that you're in where you have these guys who can kind of come in and come out and kind of play all over the field, and you really don't know who it's going to go to. But I'm very curious. Again, I'm fascinated to know how it's all going to play out and how they're going to be able to keep all these guys long term. My default right now is, okay, best case scenario, pick one between the 2022 class. So what? That's Watson and Dobbs. Pick one between last year's class. So that's Reed and Wicks. Pick one between the two tight ends, Kraft and Musgrave. And then maybe you can pick one that you didn't pick, and maybe they can come in too. So maybe 4 of these guys, 3-4 of them stick around. But I'm just fascinated to know how the money's going to work and how these are going to, like, if any of these guys are going to command top of market or near top of market money. I'm fascinated. But
I want to see what Grant DuBose is, because I think Grant DuBose might make this team over Malik Heath, and Grant DuBose may be that guy. 6'2", 200 pounds. Went up between 2 defenders during the week in practice and snagged the ball and came down with it on a throw by Clifford. I mean, maybe he's a guy that nobody's talking about, a 7th round draft pick that was hurt, all of 2023 and ends up exploding onto the scene in 24. Who knows? But like you said, it's a great problem to have. Who knows how it plays out? Let's take a quick timeout. Come back. We'll talk about Jordan Love's contract. That's next. Curd and Long, Steve Sparky Fifer, Ken Ingalls. Download the Curd and Long on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app, check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. Back on Curd and Long, Steve Sparky Fifer, host of Wisconsin Sports Daily, weekday afternoons, 2 to 5 on 1250 a.m. The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. You can follow Ken Ingalls, my special guest co-host today, at Ken Ingalls, or salary cap expert there on social media. We talked about Kenny Clark in the last segment. Let's talk about Jordan Love here in this segment. $220 million, $75 million guaranteed. He's going to have it by the end of the year in his bank account. Oh my, that breaks an NFL record. I think when the Tua deal happened, well, I don't think, I know what I said. The Tua deal happened, and I told my nephew, who told me that it happened on his phone while I was driving, I said, I guarantee you Jordan Love is going to get more than that, and it's going to come soon because they're both represented by the same agency. And fast forward later in the day, the Jordan Love deal does come. He is, making more. I guess I'm not that surprised that he got $55 million out of him. I thought it might have been closer to 57 than 55. And who knows what Dak Prescott will end up with the Raiders next offseason, because I don't think it's happening in Dallas. Ken, your thoughts on the Jordan Love deal, and what your thoughts were when it broke and then after you saw the deal?
So I was gone camping last weekend, and so I just knew that it was going to, that the
camping like with a tent camping, or
no.
Like I'm in an RV?
Camping. I was in a cabin. People were with it. I know it's camping, right? There was a water park, and
glamping.
It was glamping.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
there were trees, there were bugs, there were some campfires, but but I just knew that the deal was going to come through when I wasn't, going to be sitting in front of the computer and be able to think about it. And I was actually at the pool. I pulled out my phone and saw the Tua deal, and then I actually saw. I had a message from inside source who straight up told me, like, and this is someone who would actually know, like, it's going to be 220, 4 years.
Yeah, you tweeted it out. You said 220 on Twitter.
And so I'm literally by the pool. I'm like, okay, did it, send, and walked away. Because I'm like, I'm hanging out with the family and doing my thing. I'm not going to deal with this. And then lo and behold, it comes out exactly there. And this is someone who in the past, when Roger signed his last deal, was able to kind of give me a little bit of a heads up of what it was looking like. And so I wasn't super surprised when it broke, but like, it was good to know that it was coming soon. It landed about where I thought. This one's been interesting. You go back in time a few months and everyone's, talking about Daniel Jones money. Is he going to get 40 million a year? And then is it going to approach 50? And then, like, with every deal, that came in, or even before then, like you look at just how he played in like November, December in the playoffs. You're like, man, this guy was playing not just good quarterback. He was like the best statistical quarterback in the league. Is he going to do it? Is he going to be that Joe Burrow money? And every deal that came in, you see Goff, you see Trevor Lawrence, and then the Tua deal. I'm like, yeah, like it makes sense. I didn't think he was gonna go too much over 55. I thought he was gonna be maybe right below 55, maybe 56, just based off the agency. But I didn't think he had enough to like, of a resume to be like, I'm gonna be that $60 million player. I'm gonna be that $58 million player. But it makes sense. It's the going rate. And you look at the contract, Packers guaranteed 100.8 million total at signing, which is low at like initial, but Packers don't guarantee money. Like they broke their mold for this deal a little bit. They guaranteed the first 3 years of base salary plus that $75 million signing bonus, which was the highest ever in the NFL. So they broke some records. They have some rolling guarantees in there. So like if he's on the roster in 2025, they'll guarantee a big chunk of 2026. If he's on the roster in 2026, they'll guarantee a big chunk of 2027. So those are nice. They keep the salary cap low to begin with. However, it does start some of those things that we saw the past couple of years when the Packers were backloading, where it stays cheap now, but later on down the road, it'll get a little bit tougher to deal with, especially if all goes according to plan and hopes. He's going to get another contract by the time he turns 30 years old. He'll be on his second kind of big boy contract. Like, there'll be a lot of this money from this contract that they haven't accounted for yet on the cap in that one. So the best financial window with this deal is the next 3 years. That's not to say that after the next 3 years it's impossible or it's they're going to be back in cap hell or anything like that. It's just they are at such a competitive advantage salary cap wise, being able to have the highest paid player, not just quarterback, player in the league at a salary cap. Like this year, 20.7 million, next year under 30, and then like mid 30 the year after. Like that's a really good problem to have, especially with really cheap wide receivers in an offense. They could kind of go for it if they really wanted to. These next couple of years, you've heard Packers fans begging for them to do it. They haven't been in the position to do it. But the way this deal is structured, they really have the opportunity this season, next season, and the year after to really be financially set to make some moves.
It's funny because 30s, whatever you said it was, and I think what is it? The third year of the extension, I want to say it's like 42 million is that cap number, and then the year after that's like 70 or 72 or something crazy.
Yeah, like 74, and that year will never happen. Like
right.
it's there, and what it's really meant to do is renegotiate, right? Time for another contract, but it's also it's part of it. Like, and some of that 74 is it's actually 2023 money. It's 24 money. It'll be 26 and 27 money that it has been paid, but for salary cap purposes, lands in 28.
Yeah, but so think about it.
You got all these. Go ahead.
What's the top salary going to be in 2028 at quarterback by that point? If we're at 55 now, and you're talking 4 or 5 years from now, the top number is going to be at least 65. Somewhere in that area, I would think. Maybe it's close to 70 by that point.
Well, Dak's going to get at least, he's going to be the first 60.
Right.
Regardless, like you said, whether it's in Dallas or elsewhere, but he's going to get that 60. Who knows where it's going to be? But yeah, that's the cash. This a 74 cap. I don't care what the salary cap is at the point or what the highest paid player is. That's not something that you can just, ignore, right? That needs to come down to a more reasonable number. And I'm curious to see. It's a little early to tell, but like where the salary cap is going to trend in the coming years. This year we saw that big unexpected bump, and I think that's the COVID stuff kind of falling off. The players kind of had to like pay back some of that, prop up money that was given for the past couple of years. And I don't think there's going to be another sharp jump like we saw. I think it's going to kind of have that little hockey stick and then flatten out again. So I don't expect as big of a jump, but we'll see where things come in later in the year. But I don't think we're going to continue to see like massive like that's what happened this year, right? There's like this windfall that came in that no one was really expecting, and I think that's going to slow down a little bit more. So we'll see how things go down the road.
I mean, even if you go to that year before, 42 million. What was Rodgers' cap hit the last year or two in Green Bay?
Well, shoot, Rodgers cap hit last year, and he was in New Jersey. It was 40.3, and he wasn't even on the team.
Right.
So yeah, that was spicy. That deal, man. I could talk about that deal for I could talk about that one for an hour, but that was the best case scenario after trading him then. Only 40.3. It would have been like 60 something if they would have paid him last year and then on the trade this year. It's insane.
It is insane. One last thing. I think you've pretty much already said it, obviously, but for those not paying attention, are there big deals coming up that they're going to have to pay that we haven't really talked about as far as, okay, this dude's going to get a significant raise here in the next year or two. This dude's going to get a significant raise. Are there any big money contracts out there that they're going to have to pay in the next year or two? Because it's not coming from skilled players on offense.
Right. I don't think there's any guys that jump off the page as like must extends or anything like that. Obviously Jordan Love, that was, everyone knew that. Kenny Clark was the other name, right? Whether, got done this year, maybe after the season. But, looking at who they have coming up, some names that are going to be like unrestricted free agents, the ones that, catch my eye are Eric Stokes. He might be a guy. I know they declined his 5th-year option for next season, but that's because he hasn't been on the field. Like, they can't guarantee that. They didn't do it for Jordan Love, right? They're like, we haven't seen you play. We're not going to guarantee your 5th year. Then he played, and obviously he just got this deal. Like, he might be that guy. Like, he might be the leading candidate of someone who's going to get, who might be able to show something this season. He's, by all accounts, going to be the starter opposite of Jair this season. Maybe he does ball out. Again, that former first-round pedigree goes a long way in negotiations. He might be that guy. But other than that, they've got guys like TJ Slayton. Like, I thought maybe they pay Slayton and not Kenny or one or the other. So maybe they let him walk and just draft his replacement. I mentioned Josh Myers, Isaiah McDuffie. Like, he's a starter in this base, but I don't think he's going to be a
there
guy.
Is no big money out there.
AJ Dillon, those are the guys who are coming off of contract, but who are in like starter type roles, but none of them are, are playing at that level.
What about Preston Smith? What does that look like?
Oh, geez. Well, he's now taken his 3rd pay cut to stay in Green Bay. Yep. I would have to look at that one. I don't have it up in front of me right now, but he's under contract for a few more years. It's not like he's like done this year. Like, I think he's got 2 more years on his existing deal that he signed last offseason.
So they'll just keep going to him and telling him to take less money. If he doesn't want to do it, he's out the door, and they play with finesse.
Right. Exactly. It's not like there's going to be any opportunity where like, oh man, we suddenly need to like throw another $15 million at Preston Smith or anything like that. I think if anything, it'll be the opposite way. But he's just, Preston's one of those guys that you just love to have because he's always available, right? You take those guys. But yeah, there's not a lot that are coming, but what is going to start coming is when these young draft picks all start coming due. That's the opposite side of the coin. When you have amazing drafts and you have, you have 10, 11, 12 draft picks and 80% of them seem like they can really play football and contribute to this team, eventually they're going to have to get paid. The last time the Packers went crazy in free agency is when they're, 4 years after their terrible drafts, and they brought in the Smith brothers, they brought in Amos, Billy Turner, those 4 guys in like it was like a day and a half, all 4 of those got announced. This year it was kind of the same thing where we had, Xavier and Jacobs coming in, and, they can still do something, but there aren't guys there. But they'll have a few $1 million to spend this year. I think they're going to roll it over into next season and then start maybe paying some of these guys a little early, like a Zach Tom, like a Rasheed Walker, maybe a Romeo Dobbs and or Watson type guy who are going to be, again, on the 4th year of their rookie deals, but they are now eligible to start negotiating. Like you look at Justin Jefferson, right? I'm not saying these guys are Justin Jefferson, but Justin Jefferson was going into the 4th year of his deal this year. Now he's the highest paid wide receiver, or I don't know if he got passed like a day later by someone else, but he was. They didn't have to, because he was under contract, but like he had the negotiating power to get paid. I don't know if these guys are going to, be at that level, but they can do something more than like the $4 million they'd be getting or less, up to 20, mid-20s or something. That's you do that a few times, they add up.
There he is, our guy, Ken Ingalls. Follow him on Twitter at Ken Ingalls. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Download the Curd and Long podcast on your Odyssey app or wherever you download your favorite podcast. And, of course, check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one. Toodles.